I'm going to be presenting on the underrepresentation of Asian Americans on television. So before we begin, I just want everyone to take a look around the room. So if you look at the person sitting next to you, behind you, no two people in this room are the same. We all come from different backgrounds, different socioeconomic statuses, different cultures, and most importantly, different races. So this diversity is what makes up this room. This diversity is what makes up Biola, La Mirada, California, and even greater, and most importantly, America. So diversity is really the face of America and is what sets us apart from the rest of the world. It's something unique that America only has. However, we don't really see this diversity represented in our media. So we're going to take a look at some statistics. So the UCLA Hollywood Diversity Report, in 2016, minorities constituted 40% of the overall population. However, when it came to key industry employment opportunities, such as film directors, writers, script leads, etc., minorities were underrepresented in all of these fronts. So taking a look at this first graphic, so this one shows lead actors by race, and it shows that only 1.4 out of 10 lead actors in film were people of color. So that's around 13.9%. And in order for minorities to reach that proportionate representation, they would have to triple their share. And looking at the same graphic, but for broadcast scripted leads, there has been a trend, an overall increase of minorities. However, even then, they would have to double their numbers in order to reach the proportionate representation. Looking at another graphic, so this shows the share of film roles by race. We see that whites are very dominant and they are overrepresented when it comes to this industry. Blacks are actually reaching a pretty proportionate level to their population. However, all the other minorities are still really underrepresented. And this can also be seen for broadcast roles. That same kind of trend is seen in this graphic as well. So why talk about Asian representation? So if it isn't obvious already, I am an Asian American myself. I'm specifically Korean American, and I am studying broadcast journalism here at Biola. So already I kind of face the challenges of being a female in a very male-dominant industry. And on top of that, I'm also from a minority race, which makes things just a little bit harder. A little bit more about me. I am from Colorado Springs, Colorado, and I was born from an immigrant family. And growing up, my parents were pretty they were generally supportive of the career path that I wanted to go in. But when I told them that I wanted to be a reporter or a news anchor, they were really hesitant. I think this is the case because when they look at, like their friends and their friends' kids, who are also from immigrant families, they all tend to be in a very similar profession. So they're either doctors or dentists or professors or lawyers, those stereotypical roles that Asian parents want their children to be in, just because it does provide stability, success, prestige, and all of that comes with it. However, when it comes to the creative fields, we don't really see a lot of examples. So, one night, if you just flip through your channels on television, you don't see a lot of Asian Americans represented in TV. You don't really see that also in local news stations. So for my parents, it kind of seemed impossible to even really make it on a very successful level. It wasn't until one day when my parents saw this woman on our local news station that my parents were really supportive, and they actually became really excited that I wanted to pursue a field in this area. And that's because Patty Moon was, I think, one of the first Korean Americans to be on a local news station in my city. And so my parents had an example to look at and say, hey, one day my daughter can be like this. So Asian parents are not only not supportive because of the lack of representation or examples that they see on television, but it's also because when there are opportunities, they are very stereotypical roles for Asians. So, if you look just in the past films in Hollywood, a lot of Asians tend to play the geek or the foreigner or the kung fu fighter. So they're very stereotypical roles, and I think that's why there's a lot of hesitation for Asians to even kind of want to pursue or have open doors for opportunities. And on top of this, Hollywood is whitewashing a lot of their films. So what is whitewashing? It is a casting practice in the film industry where white actors are cast in non-white character roles or in roles scripted for non-white characters. So one of the most notorious cases of this is when Canadian actor Justin Chatwin was casted to play Goku in the Japanese anime series Dragon Ball Z. More recently, in Doctor Strange, Tilda Swinton was casted to play the Ancient One, which is originally an Asian male in the comic book series. And more near and dear to Viola's heart, Passion of the Christ, we know that the Bible takes place in the Middle East. However, in this film, even Jesus is played by a white male. So we see all of this underrepresentation and whitewashing in Hollywood and on television, but what are people doing about this, and what can I do as a journalist? So how many of you guys have either seen this film or have heard about it? Yeah, it's a really popular film. This film actually came out in August. And this was a really significant film for the Asian American community. And why was this the case? It was actually the first modern story with an all-Asian cast with an Asian American lead in 25 years. And this representation isn't only seen in front of the camera, but also behind the scenes. So the director, John M. Chu, is from a Chinese immigrant family. And the book is actually based on a novel by Kevin Kwan, who is a Singaporean author. And in this movie, a lot of the characters are very well-rounded. They're not just portrayed in your very stereotypical roles that you see in Hollywood and have seen in the past. And with this movie made history, and it really changed the course of Hollywood and changed the future of Hollywood. It was really successful in the box offices, and right now it even has a 91% review on Rotten Tomatoes. So while doing my research for this topic, I read a lot of different news articles, a lot of blog posts, and a very similar name popped up, and that name was Nancy Wang Yuan. And she is the author of Real Inequality, Hollywood Actors and Racism. And that book talks about the barriers that minorities face when it comes to Hollywood and how they are creatively challenging these stereotypes. She also happens to be a sociology professor here at Viola. So I was able to get the chance to sit down with her and talk to her about just her book, her journey, how she got involved, and her experience. But most importantly, I wanted to ask her, as an Asian American journalist, what can I do? What can I do to shed more light on this issue? And what can I do to even create a little bit of change? So this is just a little bit of what she had to say. I kind of apologize because I kind of react and say yeah, and it kind of makes it sound a little weird, but.
I think when the Asians came out, all of these Asian American journals came out.
Right.
I had no idea there were so many Asian American journalists, but every single person wrote something about Crazy Rich Asians. And that was, I tweeted about how I thanked them because I thought that was a huge contribution to the success of the film. Because there was never-ending buzz about it. Journalists were a huge part of making the film have its moment, and it did. It exceeded all box office expectations, and I think that journalists played a huge role.
Yeah, so just being able to get to talk to her and her experience and how she talked about how journalists really played a role in the success of a film gave me a lot of hope too, and that my words as a journalist, really do matter, and I really can make a difference and shed light on a movie like this. The chances of me being an actress in a Hollywood film or being an author of a New York Times bestseller is really, really slim. However, I learned that I still can use my journalism degree that I got from Biola in order to create change, and I can do this by reacting, critiquing, and bringing traffic to different issues such as this one. Thank you.